at the moment. In reality, what you have to do, I mean, it demonstrates even on an unwindy day how much air movement there is.
How quickly would you say it should dissipate? It is moving quite quickly.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, if it's still around in 2 or 3 minutes, then there's something, there's a lack of.
Hello, my name is McFadzean, Dairy Knowledge Exchange Manager for the North of England for AHDB. I'm with one of my strategic farms. Could you guys introduce yourselves?
Right, I'm Tom Pattison. I've been here for, my entire life, just over 60 years. I farm here with my son, my wife and my son, and we run a high production Holstein herd, and we have done for the last 50 years.
Mark, could you just tell us a little bit about your role with Willow Tree?
Yes, my name is Mark Glover, and I've been Howard and Tom's vet now for just over 40 years. And I've learned a lot from working here and seeing all the changes that take place and the huge increase in production that's taken place over that time, whilst at the same time maintaining cow health and welfare.
Can you give us a rough idea of what kind of increases you've had in that time period?
I think when I first started 40 years ago, there were maybe 70 or 80 cows, giving probably 6,500 kilos, and now there are getting on for 300 cows, producing over 13,000 kilos, and still with good fertility and low disease.
That's incredible. Tom, can you just tell us a little bit about Willow Tree and what?
So I'm Tom Pattison. So I've been full-time here now for coming up 15 years since leaving school. It was a case of either going away to university or coming home and growing a business, which is exactly what we did. We added on a couple new sheds, made a new dry cow shed, and then obviously everything's gone towards the health and welfare of the cows. Then in 2022, we were introduced, became part of the strategic dairy farm for AHDB, which has opened up a few new sort of windows and opportunities to get involved with different experts within the business and drive the force sort of forward a bit further.
Right, thank you very much. Hello, my name is McFadzean, Dairy Knowledge Exchange Manager for the North of England. Today we're at Willow Tree with Howard and Tom. We're going to be working on ventilation with Jamie Robertson, and I was hoping you could give us an idea of why you want to work in the ventilation of the farm.
During working with the AHDB, being a strategic dairy farm over the last few years, our main aim to start with was working on mastitis, reducing the case of first mastitis, and within getting some expertise advice, we opened up the buildings so the cows now are all grouped together in 4 sheds. We have noticed over the last few years that the grouping has become a little bit of a problem, especially in the summer, in the hot days. Cows sort of like different areas of the sheds, and so we've sort of got Jamie on farm to have a look and see if we can shed any light onto how we can improve the ventilation, if it's the ventilation that's causing us problems.
Mark, do you see any ways we could future-proof the shed to help the herd health?
Yes, well, we have in our thoughts and musings about what to do, wondered about increasing inlet volumes of fresh air into the shed to combat the very hot days in the summer when temperature and humidity are often very high.
Yep. Jamie, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think you know, this is overall a really good shed. It is a good shed, but there's a lot going on in here. You've got fantastic cows, a huge yield going on, and so the energy and moisture going through this building is just phenomenal, you know. And so the first thing is I'm always interested in what the cows have been telling you and what it is about them. You know, they choose particular points at different times of the year on the different conditions, but we're not sure what the link is. Is that fair?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So I think going back to basics, we're looking, the first thing to get really clear in our head that ventilation is actually mostly wind driven in our naturally ventilated buildings. So whilst we can get very sexy about the numbers on stack effect, that comes later. And when I look at the buildings here, as we look around, actually, whilst it is a cluster, which is very typical, a building next to a building next to a building, it's what your industry does, that they're pretty good in that the air can get in from all the way around. So that's the second place I would always go looking, is sight and your wind direction. First thing is the wind comes from every point of the compass, you know, so we can be, however, quite predictable that direction is the west, and for most cattle buildings in the whole of Britain and Ireland, then more than half your weather comes from that direction. Now, if we're sat down in a hollow or there's a whole load of silage pits, then something different's going to be going on. I'm just going to keep an eye on that camera. No, we're good. But here, this is actually, it's a superb location because the wind can get at these buildings all the way around. You can see come the winter, there's not a lot of protection and it'll be pretty leery in here. So one of the things we discussed, yes, if we look over that back wall, is whether that's an area we could get more air in. Ventilation is all about in and out. You've got to have both.
Yeah.
So what we're actually going to do is move to the next stage, because I think the problem with opening buildings up, maybe completely taking cladding off, is that that's going to be great in the summer. But come October, November, December, you could end up like over here. You would easily have rainfall on these beds, even though they're nearly 20 feet away from the sidewall. You don't want that. And so I think the first thing is the maths. It's in the AHDB guidance notes, but we can do simple calculations to say whether there's enough in the area in that side wall to let the air in if it needs to come in. So we can do that. Yeah. So what thoughts have you had about opening up the building and trying to get a more even distribution of the cattle?
Well, we've noticed the cows in the far shed, which is the south facing shed, they migrate even today, which is, I don't know, 14 degrees tops. There's more cows in this shed where we're stood than there is over there. So that even on a coolish day, they've migrated. And we're not sure why, but we're thinking about taking every other Yorkshire boarding off and actually putting our space boarding off and putting it on the inside, so we actually double or more than double the intake of air. Do you think that would be the right thing to do?
It's possible in some situations it might be the right thing to do, to go from spaceport to Yorkshire board, where you have the two lines of board, massively increasing in that area. Definitely a good idea, but before we do that, we would do fairly simple calculations. So I would sort of say here that we've got 8 bays, there's 54 metres of length. We've got to have at least 4 metre high of board. So 4 times 54 is 266 metres. You know, well, if 10% of that was a hole, which it is, then we've got 20 square metres of inlet. How much do we need? And the answer as a ballpark, well, we need at least 0.1 square metre per cow. How many cows in here?
If the whole...
No, just this side.
Just
so
this side.
Probably 150 or so?
No, there'll be more. 68 3 times is...
Yeah,
About
just
200.
Yeah.
200. So we've got about 200 cows. Yeah. We need a minimum of 0.1 square metre each. There's 20 square metres needed. We've got it. So,
from one side.
you know, and that's, well, I need that on one side. I need the same on this side. So we're about that, but that isn't to say that, okay, we could, if you took it away completely, there will be times of the year in the summer when a small breeze will be beneficial compared to restricting it the way it is. The problem is, what are you going to do in February?
And if you take it all off in summer, what happens to the sunshine that comes in? Does that not have a detrimental effect?
It certainly will if it goes on to cows. So over that side, south facing, it absolutely would have a detrimental effect. Yeah. So we've got, it's the same wherever we are. We have this sort of our maritime climate, cold, wet winters, warmer and warmer summers. But you bring out the point about resilience and the future. I think that's where I would think we go before you chop up any of it.
Yeah.
We'll do the maths and see how far short we are of ideal on the natural ventilation. Because if we look up, you know, it's a clean roof on the inside, which suggests it's ventilating pretty well. From what you've told me as well, you know, when people have been working in here, cutting grooves in the floor, you know, the dust goes out quite cleanly. But again, I think for all of us, they'll take measure. Again, we can do the same thing. If it's 54 metres long, it's got 53 gaps, slots in the roof. Each one of them is X metres long. You do the maths and you work out how close is the accumulated outlet in the roof to what we need. And after that, you can sort of say, right, if the inlet and outlet areas are where they should be, what else can be done to future-proof? Because if it gets hotter and hotter, you can't expect the building the building cannot make itself cool. Not possible.
If it's up to capacity of in and out, without dragging any more air in, forcing it.
But again, you will find that in that there are certain things that would make the building hotter than it needs to be, which is not the case here, like skylights. You know, the slots are good because, you know, they don't let in a lot of radiant energy from the sun. You know,
and I must admit, that roof, 25-year-old somewhere in there, but actually, when you do look up, it looks new.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking.
Jamie, as we wander around, or as people get to wander around, what would you suggest they look for in the shed to kind of indicate how to change things?
Well, the first thing we've mentioned repeatedly now is cow behaviour. Yeah, best sensor out, the best sensor you can have, and that this business about 7 times of the year they're one place and other times of the year somewhere different. That's key. The fact that I don't understand it, you're not giving you the
Obviously,
answer.
we've only found that out the last few years, and obviously certainly not last year, the year before in 2022, we had that really hot summer. But previously, have we not noticed it because we've had cows fastened up in individual sheds? Now we've let them out so they can move around. They're now telling us that which are the preferred places.
And they will, as you know, especially in the summer temperatures, the cows they'll move to find the smallest difference in airspeed. Again, this is something most stock people would recognise. You know, they go up to one end of the shed, the other end of the shed. So what that's telling you is that once the temperature gets to sort of 15, 16, 17 degrees centigrade, then the cow is hot. The building are going to be hot inside, hot outside, hot in a good building, hot in a bad building. It doesn't make any difference. But what they're looking for is air movement. And you get to the point whereby, and I'm thinking here, this is a well-exposed site, cleanly exposed. You know, as I said, sort of, we check stuff before we start pulling walls off, but it might be, if it's got as good as it's going to get, the only way you're going to get a consistent condition around the whole building in hot weather is to move air, get fans, which is a cost and a running cost, but it might be worthwhile. The other thing in terms of sort of general you're asking is, so roof lights, you seriously don't need them on the south facing view. You don't need much of them. And there was a trend where, in terms of animal welfare, it was considered a good idea. So quite a number of buildings built maybe 20 years ago, too many roof lights. Paint them out safely. You know, use a cherry picker, put in a water-based paint. If you want light, turn the lights on. The other thing is access to water. You know, certainly here, we'll have a look on the way around. You've got clean water in clean troughs. Fantastic. I'm sorry I go to too many places where that's not the case. But of course, if an animal's getting hot, it wants to drink. So you need good access, no restriction, and no competition. You know, it's amazing how many places you look at a water trough, you know, when they come out of the parlour twice a day, and after half the cows have been through, the trough's empty. It doesn't fill fast enough. So that, and the other thing is the floor. Obviously, animals will tend to accumulate sometimes if there's a lot of water lying around in hot weather, because water is it's cooling in the summer.
You talked about making a lot of minor changes that might add up to the overall good. And what would you suggest about taking some of the panels out of this eastern aspect of the shed to make it all equally open along there?
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that there is quite a canopy at the other side giving a fair degree of protection.
I think this is great, this bit at the end here. So, when you're already doing a pretty good job, I'll take the 1% and another 1%. So, yeah. On the basis that wind-driven ventilation is what we're after, when there's no wind, it's all to do with that. But everything that gets in the way of impeding airflow, so the other side of any barrier like that, there will be an area of reduced airspeed and reduced air movement. And that, again, this is something you can look, you come into this coming summer, is to sort of think that whether the extent, some of these areas of cladding below eaves height, do I need it? If I can't see a benefit of it, take it out. Make a barbecue.
And do you think there'll be any detriment in winter removing the boarding that's below the eaves?
Not so much this side when there's the lean-to at the.
I think it's a very, very interesting point. If there was no lean-to on that, I would leave them exactly where they are. In about 7 days' time, we're in March, by the way. The beast from the east is going to arrive, and that is protecting to a certain extent these cubicles. It has that subtle effect. Yeah. So I would be, if it wasn't for the lean-to, I'd be leaving them where they are. Absolutely.
Would you take the top bit off, the not below the eaves, but actually not all the way down to the bottom?
The level of the canopy.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we go ventilation being mostly wind driven, let's go at least 90% of the year. 2/3 of it is coming from that direction. So it's kind of like, as long as it can get out, we have plenty of out. Yeah?
Yeah.
So that is not going to influence what comes in. Whereas, we'll go to other buildings, don't we? And that'll be blocked because it's a side split wall.
Yeah.
So if you get in, you can't get out, it has to go that way. So you don't need to touch any of that, you've plenty of out. Flip it on its head and say, well, there's maybe 5% of the year it's going to come that way. Most of that in the winter, I'd leave it where it is. Because it's at that point, again, if you have, which we will get a week in late winter coming from that's the Ural Mountains over there. You can't see them quite on this camera, but we can't see them. But when it comes, there will be a drop in yield. That's a percentage we don't want. So I'd leave that alone. If we go the other way, then there's a couple of areas inside the house where I would simply say just to take it out. I cannot see a disbenefit of taking it away.
So you take off the boarding then, it's like the middle of the shed, if you like.
Yeah.
At the bottom end of this shed,
Yeah.
below the eaves.
Yes, I would.
Right all the lot, right to the bottom.
Yeah. Because the wind movement is easier to understand when there's plenty of wind about, because you can feel it. I think what you're seeing with your cows, with so much energy that they're trying to get rid of, that they're moving around trying to find a marginal increase in airspeed. That's all that's going on. And even though you're saying quite rightly, it's not warm, but these cows are producing a lot of heat. If they can find a way of getting rid of it, they will. And I think that it's quite interesting. I mean, I'm getting a reasonable bit there.
There's a bit of a draft.
When we stand down there, you've got the breeze coming from the west.
Yeah.
Now we've moved up to the east end of the shed. You're getting the breeze from the east.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's actually quite still outside if you watch.
Stack effect.
Well,
The hot air.
Yeah.
Drawing it in here.
yeah. See, that comes back to the inlet and outlet. If as the wind speed slows down, the impact of stack effect takes over. It's not like the stack effect does nothing until the wind stops completely, especially when you've got this much heat in this building. Irrelevant for calf housing. Right? But in here, we're going, as you see, we've got 65, we've 100 kilowatts almost, which is influencing air temperature, hot air rises. You've got brilliant distribution of holes in the roof. You can't get any better than this, actually. But we're in a relatively low rainfall area, so you can get away with it. But this will be drawing the air in and up, and we're standing on the inlet impact. So it really is pretty good. And you can imagine that as it gets hotter, then the impact of the spaceport behind you there, it will be slowing down that natural inlet. It will, because it's got to suck it like through a sieve. Whereas here, there's no sieve. It's just straight in.
And is a cow that gives 6,000 litres as opposed to a cow that gives 12,000 litres, are the maths the same? Are the inlet areas the same and the outlet areas the same? They must produce a vastly different amount of energy.
There is a big difference in energy and moisture. See, that's the other thing that I think that we're working out. The industry's waking up to. We can have hot cows in a climate that's not particularly hot. It's because it's temperature and humidity. These girls are drinking 120, 130 litres of water a day. The 6,000 litre cow, half that. So automatically we have half, or if you like, whichever way you look at it, we have twice as much moisture in this building per cow than a grass-fed wee Jersey or something. And so the dynamics are different. But on the mat, don't overcomplicate it. overcomplicate it. We keep the numbers where they are. We maybe have to revise them in your case upwards, because we would say the same on the inlet areas on the maths. These cattle they don't need 20 square metres in the side wall, they maybe need 30 or 40, but we'll do the maths on that to check.
And bearing in mind, we need the inlet areas for 10 years' time, 20 years' time, not just today.
But you do need to accept that if you have no restriction on inlet, and it's 18 degrees centigrade, the only way you're going to keep the cows comfortable and not all bunched in one corner where the wind's coming from, on the low wind speed, is fans. And then it's a matter of your cost effectiveness.
After them few days.
You know, and you absolutely do that. You go, well, you know, it'll cost a 5-figure sum to put fans into this around the building. You know, how many days a year will it have the opportunity of giving you a return on that investment? So you're measuring, which is what you're going to do, isn't it?
Yes, we can monitor respiratory rates.
But you'll be able to monitor the temperature and humidity, and that will give us more of a objective view of how many days or hours a year that level of investment could give a return. Because it's not worth it, you don't do it. You just have hot cows for it.
And make the best of what we've got.
Yes, definitely. Good.